Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Welcome to Positive Sum. Let's jump right in. So the question today we're going to talk about is what are some halal financing options? Now, the questioner did not put their location. I live in the US. I'm assuming this is a question that would apply at least to the West, but my answer is going to have to do with the US specifically. Right. So the question was again, what are some financial, I'm sorry, what are halal car financing options? Right. And just to start with an assumption here, we're not talking about maybe private financing, borrowing money from a friend, and what the stipulations might be or a family member. This is not what we're talking about. We're talking about if you go to a dealership or basically any type of car salesman and you don't have enough money to buy the car outright, right? What are your options? Okay. Unfortunately, there aren't many great options. Okay, they aren't great. So option number one, we're talking here about someone who doesn't have enough money potentially to buy the car outright, but we still have to talk about it. Option number one is buying the car outright with cash, right? So, and that would entail if you're able to wait and save enough money to buy the car cash again, that might be your best option, right? Ideally, if you buy a used car, that could save you some money. That became a little bit questionable since COVID started. Going back to COVID, I personally bought a car, and at the time, I spent a lot of my time and energy trying to make a functioning comparison between buying a brand new car versus buying a used car. And I did some calculations based on the useful life of the car or the potential remaining mileage. And when I did the math, the difference was very little. And at the time, part of the context here at the time was that used car prices had soared up. I'm not sure what the used car market looks like right now, but this is definitely something to look at. If it makes sense to purchase a used car and you're able to and you're able to wait, maybe you have other transportation means or you're able to take the bus, whatever the case may be, this is obviously an individual case by case basis and appreciation. But if you're able to save up the money and then buy your car, that is one option, obviously. The second option, again, if we're talking about walking into a dealership and financing a car, so the second option would be the 0% APR, zero APR deals that the dealerships offer. I'm sorry, it's not offered by the dealership, but a lot of times it's actually offered by it's in-house financing by that car manufacturer. Okay, so if you go, for example, to Volkswagen, there's a branch of the Volkswagen company that's just financing, right? And all of the major car manufacturers will have an in-house financing division. And a lot of times they will have 0% deals. They don't all have them at the same time. The good thing about the 0% deal is this is not like credit cards where there's a stipulation that if you don't pay by such and such time, you will have to pay interest. This is very different. This is actually 0%. And on the contract itself, the sales agreement, there is no stipulation of interest. Or if there is, it'll just say it's zero. There's no interest at all, right? And then, of course, if in a scenario where someone were no longer able to pay, the car would the dealership would have to go through whatever means they can to recover their vehicle, right? But hopefully that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about someone who's financing their car, but with the understanding and belief, inshallah, that they're actually able to pay it off completely. So that would be the second option. I believe that's an actually great option. Alhamdulillah, in the last few years, I was able to buy two cars, right? A car on two occasions. One of them I lost to an accident, but on two occasions I was able to buy a car with 0%. It made sense for my individual situation at the time to buy a brand new car. Inshallah, I'll make some videos talking about my step-by-step process for how I did the research and basically process of elimination. Obviously, my first number one deal breaker was that there could not be any interest. So that alone limited my options in terms of who had a 0% deal at the time. Alhamdulillah, the way it worked out was that the car that I wanted actually was the one that had the 0%, or one of the ones that had it. So that worked out very well. And I will talk about my experience in doing the research. It's best to go into the dealership armed with knowledge already, having a clear understanding of what you want. And if your expectations are not met, you should just walk away. Okay. But in any case, those are the two good options you have to purchase a car. A third option would be to lease a car. Leasing is fine. Okay. Some lease options, well, you always have to look at all of the details of the agreement, but you can lease a vehicle. In that case, you're not purchasing it. I have never leased a vehicle personally, but I know that's one thing that's okay. Definitely look at all of the details for the transactions. So I would say, yeah, you have these two options, which is buying cash outright or a 0% deal. And then the third option ish would be to lease a car. One thing that's very common, I'll just end the answer here with just something that I've noticed a lot over the years, is that people will go to the dealership knowing very little, unfortunately, about the financing situation and the different car options they might have. But they go with a good intention, inshallah, and with the understanding that they don't want to pay interest. So they'll talk to the dealer about that. And sometimes they offer you this option to just add to the price now, and we'll call it 0%. Allahu alam, if you if you're able to go to a local masjid or your local imam, go and ask. I am not a student of knowledge, and I definitely don't want to use this channel to give the misunderstanding that I can give fatwa on what is halal or what is haram. But to the best of my knowledge and understanding, and also with the finance background that I have, I don't see how that is an acceptable option for Muslims, right? Because what they do really is they calculate you're still leasing, I'm sorry, you're still borrowing the money, you're still going through all of the same steps to finance your car. And all they're doing at that stage is they're calculating the interest based on the actual interest rate. They're adding that to the price, and you're just paying the interest up front. Essentially, that's all you're doing when that happens. So I don't think first of all, I don't think, and Allah Azza wa Jalla knows best, I don't think that's a halal option. That's an acceptable option for us Muslims, to be simply adding the interest to the price and then writing zero at the interest rate, right? So because you're still paying it, the understanding is still there. We're essentially just changing the name, right, or moving the money up front. That is different than if someone were buying the car first and then selling it back to you at a higher price. That's a different story altogether, but that is not what they're doing. And unfortunately, I've seen so many stories of Muslims doing that. I've seen even Reddit posts where dealers are talking and they're even laughing at some of this stuff because it's so ridiculous. So, in addition to the fact that it is not uh, necessarily a good option for Muslims living in the US, it is also a terrible way to purchase a car. Okay. When you're buying something, you want to make sure you're going about it uh, the smartest possible way to save as much money as you can, make your money work for you, inshallah. In this channel, we'll be talking about different ways to save money, different ways to optimize your earning and your earnings, and also how to invest, inshallah. Inshallah, part of my plan, part of my intent is to build a community of people who can come together and work to resolve these issues. There are plenty of ideas. I've seen something, for example, in Canada where people were doing some a community type of purchasing. So they're purchasing these vehicles or houses as a group and then selling it back to the one individual person who would like to buy it. So there are different frameworks, inshallah, completely halal that we can do. The number one thing that it'll require is a community of people around it. My plan is to build that community. My plan is to help address some of these issues right here in America. For those who live in the West, I'm sorry, for those who live in North America, in the US in particular. And I'm also hoping, inshallah, that these will be things that can be easily replicated in other places where Muslims live as a minority, but a significant minority enough that if we came together, that's very significant financially. So if you are interested in that, if you would like to be part of that effort long term, I will create a form and add it here. You can use that form to submit your questions, but also if you're interested, you can add your email address. I am going to create a mail list, and once we get to that point, I'll start emailing that out. And yeah, so just wanted to add that clarification. Please go ahead and share your thoughts if you have any. Share your ideas. Until next time. Assalamu alaikum.